Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Today, we have a showdown of two boutique independents from the fatherland. German dress watches, go at it, versus starts now. Okay, so neither one of these brands is going to be super familiar to collectors. There's no Patek Philippe or a Lange und Söhne on the table today. So I'm going to simply start with the watch off to my left from Lang und Heyne. This is Friedrich III. Now, this is named after Frederick the Elector, also known as Frederick the Wise. As with all Lang und Heyne watches made in Dresden, Germany, named after German royalty and electors, sometimes one and the same. So the watch you see here is in stainless steel, 39.2 millimeters in diameter. It has a unique triple lug junction. It's only 10.7 millimeters thick and 46.1 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, so it wears really compact on the wrist. I'm going to quickly demonstrate how this watch fits on my wrist of 16 centimeters circumference. It is a very compact watch. Not only is it thin, but it has a domed bezel, which allows a dress cuff to easily slide up and over. And you can see down the barrel just how far inboard of the edge of my wrist the lugs are on each side. Over the top, which exaggerates the width of the watch, it might look broader than that, but it's really not. I'm pulling the strap tight, and this is always the definitive angle. Lugs well inboard. This watch would fit on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. High quality strap, but you can see you are locked into a proprietary strap or at least one custom cut for the watch. The strap fixed to the case using screws and bars, and we've got a pin buckle right here that is company branded that also uses screws and bars for security, a little bit more peace of mind than with spring bars. Matte finished, black, monotone stitched, folded edge. This is large rectangular scale, symmetrical scale alligator leather, high quality. You always know that when you're looking at large symmetrical rectangular scales. This is actually a Parisian-made Jean Rousseau custom strap, so I'm going to withhold my opinion on the straps, as either watch could be fitted with a factory piece, but in this instance, one watch is not. So we're going to pass judgment on the hardware itself. Now, looking at the case, it's definitely less fluid than the Moritz Grossmann. A cylindrical mid-case, lugs that are sharply broken out from the case band, a little bit of a flange to the bezel, and you can see that the bezel is domed, everything is polished. We have a bit of a crown shoulder profile, and then a vintage-inspired pocket watch sort of driven onion profile to this crown, but one element you wouldn't have seen on a pocket watch or a vintage watch traditionally, which is the branding of the crown with media blast and polish. The dial is blue, but it's made of sterling silver. You can see it has three different planes, one for the small second, one for the center dial, one for the track outboard. Blue with a railroad track for reading your minutes. You've got pike style hands, which are beautifully cut and manually finished by Lang und Heyne. And you can see that they've been filled manually with a material called high ceram, which is a type of ceramic, and no, it's not loom. We have a little concentric pattern for the sub-seconds, a lancet-style counterweighted seconds hand, and look at the quality of the polished cannon pinion, as well as the center junction of the hands, really beautifully mirrored and dished. The watch does feature stop seconds, turn it all over. Gorgeous movement, and a big one, 33.5 millimeters in diameter. This is what they call caliber 5, and you can see that it's different from a lot of German wristwatch architecture in that it doesn't try to look exactly like a pocket watch. There's no three-quarter bridge. Instead, we have this bridge that's more of an island for the crown wheel, barrel, train, and escapement, which gives us this large shoulder area where text can be freehand engraved on the base plate. We have a frosting that's very consistent with vintage pocket watches, as Streifen or stripes would not have been universal in antiquity. You can also see we've got spectacular solarization of the ratchet wheel, which has double solarization, and then the crown wheel. And if you look carefully, you can see that the teeth of the wheels are micro beveled with a black polished click and click spring, and you could really see there's a wonderful extensible action to the click like a vintage watch and a vintage German-made watch. Taking a look at the bridges, you can see that the beveling is quite good. We have huge blued screws, but note that we have both black polished and fire blued screws. Both types are present. Get close to the screws and you can see they feature chamfering around their circumference, but also in their slots. The balance cock is solid gold and freehand engraved, And then we've got a diamond capstone. The rubies are synthetic, but the diamond is real. Atop the balance, we have a blued overcoil hairspring designed to breathe concentrically in every position. There is a stop seconds function. We have a black polished swan's neck, fine adjustment, a black polished steel cover to the escape wheel, and then we have golden chaton fixing the jewels the way pocket watch jewel settings were done. You can see the quality of the beveling here, as well as the beveling inside the jewel sinks. All of it gorgeously done in distinctive fashion. You can see the golden wheels at center have been internally chamfered and then satinated on their tops. It leaves very little to be desired. Now, its competition from Glashütte, which is about 36 kilometers away, Moritz Grossmann. Now, here's another watch with a person's name on it. No, this is not Frederick. This is Moritz Grossmann, a famous German watchmaker of antique times. But the watch itself is known as the Tremblage. This is a model that launched in 2021. And let's talk about the fit first, and then we'll get into the dial and the movement. You can see here the case is a little bit more sculpted. We have some curvature. You can see that there is some teapot-like tumble home from the bezel down to the case back being broader than the bezel. And then we have incredible welded lug construction where the lug is inserted into a slot in the case. They're welded together, and then filing is used to create that sharp break between them and remove the gathered material from the weld. We also have more complex lug profiles. You can see there's a little bit of an inward concave to them. We have an unbranded crown and a release system for the setting mechanism we'll get to in a moment. Note the dramatically boxed sapphire. Okay, so dial side. Well, actually, before we go dial side, let me just explain that although this watch is rose gold, which can lead to an apples to oranges type comparison, we actually have a stainless steel version of the same watch at one of our other locations. And as a result, the watch is available in stainless steel, so you can compare this to this and do so at the exact same price point. But let's talk about the dial. Now, the dial is made of German silver, which is an alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc. So the copper gives it its golden hue, and this sort of tremblage pattern, a sort of engraving, is random from dial to dial. No two will be exactly alike. This isn't done by an engine. You can also see that the lettering, the numerals, the tracks, even the little Made in Germany text, all of that is raised and relieved and one and the same as the dial. It is a monoblock dial of German silver. Now, the hands are truly special. Lang Heyne does beautiful hands, but Moritz Grossmann does better ones. You could see that they're manually cut, then rounded and polished, and then fired in a disciplined and limited fashion that creates this violet hue. If you let steel fire indefinitely, you get blue. If you pull it out of the fire at the right time, you get this color, which is why I find this just a little bit more artisanal and thoughtful and original. Plus, there's the fact that the hands are needle-like and objectively more difficult to create. Now, a note about that little nub next to the crown, that little secondary control. The setting system here, I mean, we may as well just demonstrate both. The Lang Heyne features a stop seconds function that halts the large balance. Both watches beat away at 2.5 hertz. Now, notice that this crown has returned to its default position. It snaps right back in when you activate hacking seconds. So watch this. Just like that, hacking seconds is active. Now the crown is flush to the case, and I can move the hands very precisely. There's almost no dead angle. As I turn the crown, the hand moves from the first angular displacement. And you could see that I'm able to set the watch very precisely, and that the balance, which is made in-house by Moritz Grossmann, is still. But when I press this little release here, watch the crown and watch the balance, nothing can budge the hand. A lot of times when you are setting a watch, you'll set the time and you'll set it very precisely, then you'll push the crown back in and the minute hand will jump. Well, here you pull the crown out, it snaps back in immediately, then you set the time, then you press the release, which resumes the operation of the watch. So there's no returning the crown and displacing the hand. Taking a quick look at the back, we've got a movement that is even bigger. We may as well do fit, since we're talking about size. Fit comes first, and it's fundamental. 41 millimeters in diameter, 50.3 millimeters lug to lug, and 11.8 millimeters thick with a 20 millimeter spacing between conventional lugs. Now, I think you need a wrist of at least 15 centimeters, preferably 16 like mine, to wear this well. It is a bigger watch. Okay, the movement. This is a caliber that is 36.4 millimeters in diameter, caliber 100.1, and you can see it looks a little bit austere compared to the visual warmth and richness of the Lang Heyne caliber 5, but I'm going to share this with you. This watch, when you get closer, might even be a little bit better finished. It doesn't register from this kind of distance, but the closer you get, the more you realize. So let's talk about some of the tech specs here. Manual wind, 42-hour power reserve. Both of these are 18,000 vibrations per hour. This is a 20-joule movement with a unique hacking second system. Both of the watches feature the 2.5 hertz beat rate and an overcoil. And you can see the overcoil right here on top of the proprietary balance. We've got a fine adjustment mechanism that's actually tailored by a screw with a little rack that moves the needle back and forth for very precise adjustment. Then you have your curb pins at the end. And we have a freehand engraved balance cock that is even a little bit more elaborate and intricately decorated than what we saw on the Lang Heyne. And then we also have the same for the escape wheel cock. Now again, we're referencing a period before stripes were common, so we have a media blasted bridge, and that's actually common between the two. Both feature media blasted bridges and base plates. Here we have a black polished crown wheel core, and we have triple solarized ratchet wheel. This is incredible stuff that matches the Lang Heyne blow for blow right down to the freehand engraving of every character that's on the movement. I would say that the beveling here is a little bit better in detail, even though it's narrower. When you get close, it is brighter and more flawless. And then here we have screws that are fired with the same technique as the hands to create this sort of dark violet brown color. We also have clear sapphires, which try to give the watch a distinct sort of sober Teutonic look, but it's almost too austere. But it's the same material. It's corundum chemically. It's the same as a synthetic sapphire. They're both 30 meters water resistant. And of course, you could see how the stop seconds function works right here. This watch has a lot of advantages, and we may as well talk about those advantages right now. So in terms of price, pre-owned, this is about $49,900 or 50 grand pre-owned in rose gold. But as I mentioned, there's a steel version we have pre-owned that's about $33,000, which makes it almost a wash, as this is $34,000 pre-owned. So again, stainless steel, we're within the haggling margin. It basically the same if you're comparing steel to steel, apples to apples. In terms of finish, this watch has superior dial detail. If you look at all of the nuances of this dial, especially the fact that there's nothing applied, everything is raised and relieved from the base, and then you add those hands, which are of extraordinary quality. Even the polishing of the cannon pinion and the hand centers, just a little bit bigger and better under 10x magnification as I've inspected these watches. So this watch does have better hands and dial detail, although don't get me wrong, Friedrich is excellent. This might be best in the industry. Also, it has this unique and superior setting system that does remove all of the risk of accidental displacement of the hands. Plus, the setting itself is so precise, it's singular. And it really does work quite well. Everything it's advertised to be. It's not finicky, it's not temperamental, it doesn't feel like a boutique product. It feels every inch a premium, well-sorted system with real benefits to the owner. I also think here we have movement finish that from this distance looks like it might be a little bit more austere and plain and less ornate, but the closer you get, the more you realize things like those pale sapphires, the size of the freehand engraving, not double solarization, but triple solarization on the ratchet wheel. The bevels are cleaner and brighter, and we also have a more intricate and I would even say better applied set of volutes, scrolls, and banknote flourishes than we have on the Lang Heyne, which is nice, but not quite as clean and flawless at close range. I think right here, you're looking at something that's maybe a 10 out of a 10 versus 9 out of 10 right here. I would also really emphasize that when you get super close to the bevels here, you do find some imperfections on their surfaces, whereas when you put this thing under a loop, everything is surgically perfect. And I say that goes right down to the wheels themselves. If you look at where the spoke joins that center wheel in the middle of the movement, you could see that there are interior creases where the bevel of the spoke meets the internal circumference of the wheel. Whereas here, if you look at the internal beveling, you could see that that junction has been rounded off, and this is really phase stuff, but it matters. I would also say that the fact that this uses a normal strap makes it easier to accessorize, so lots to love here. In terms of what they have in common, basically the same on price, and I would say both have very distinctive movement styles that manage not to feel like generic Longa copies. They've definitely plowed their own furrows and created styles that are instantly recognizable as their brands. So here we have a big advantage in that this is an easier watch to wear. First, it's smaller, 39.2, and it's only 46.1 millimeters from lug to lug, whereas this watch right here is considerably thicker, and that is 50.3 millimeters from lug to lug. So the Lang Heyne is 10.7 millimeters, and the Moritz Grossmann is 11.8. So this is a more compact watch in every way. It wears better on a small wrist. I'm going to say that in terms of architecture, which is how the pieces are shaped, proportioned, and laid out, this looks a lot more interesting. Whereas this looks like a conventional sort of three-quarter bridge pocket watch tribute, this thing almost looks so lush you can't believe it. There's heat coming off this movement to the eye. And again, that's from, let's say, 30 centimeters. There is more power reserve here. So 55 on this watch versus 42 on this watch. And then also I like the fact that the strap is fixed by screws to both the lugs and the pin buckle. Whereas here, we're dependent on spring bars, which are nice and all, but let's be perfectly honest, spring bar disasters do happen. I would be a little bit more comfortable if we used screws and bars here, even if it cost a bit more money. So which one do I prefer? I'm going to be perfectly honest that in terms of the movement aesthetic, I like the Friedrich better. And I think that this is going to be the crowd pleaser between the two movements, even though I think qualitatively, when you get close, this is better. This watch is very appealing ergonomically, but the dial is a little bit plain, whereas here, the dial is lush, artisanal, and from tremblage to tremblage, even two examples of the same line are going to be quite distinct. So if you give me the Moritz Grossmann Tremblage in steel, that's probably going to be my choice. Now, if Lang Heyne ever makes something like the Moritz Grossmann back page where you get the movement on the dial side, that would probably be my choice, but attention to detail matters, and this watch has it on both sides. This is going to be my personal choice, given that in steel, the pricing's almost a wash. So you guys let me know in the description below, which one would you take? If pricing is not an object, would it be Lang Heyne with the Friedrich III or Moritz Grossmann with the Tremblage?